The woman stood at the lobby entrance, soaked from the rain. Her coat, once white, was gray now, clinging to her like defeat. She carried a single paper bag, torn at the edge, dripping onto the polished marble. You can't be here. The security guard's voice cut through the echoing silence of the corporate tower. Sharp, cold, practice. She didn't argue. I just looked up, eyes quiet and patient. Something was unnerving in how calm she was, how she seemed to see through him, not at him. Inside the bag was a photo, her and her husband, years ago, before the empire, before the board meetings and broken promises. He didn't know. No one did. The poor woman they were about to throw out wasn't homeless. She owned the building. The lobby of Haven Financial Group looked more like a cathedral than an office. Marble floors that never knew dust. A chandelier that hummed like wealth. Every sound, the clack of heels, the soft ping of the elevator, echoed power. The receptionist's desk glowed blue under frosted glass. A young woman sat behind it, tapping nails painted gold, eyes barely lifting. Security, she called out, not even pretending to whisper. We've got another one. Another one, as if compassion had become an inconvenience, as if poverty were contagious. The poor woman didn't move. She looked around slowly, eyes tracing the lines of a building she helped design. She had chosen those marble veins herself. She had fought for the open atrium, so sunlight can reach even the lowest floor, she once told the architects. Now, no one remembers her face. The guard arrived, a tall man in his 40s, uniform stretched across his chest, radio crackling. He carried the kind of authority that thrives in silence. He didn't ask questions. He issued orders. I said you can't be here. The woman nodded once, voice soft. I'm just here to see my husband. The receptionist laughed through her nose. Do you have an appointment? The woman reached into her bag. Careful, slow. The guard stiffened, hand near his belt. She pulled out a folded envelope, corners worn. Inside, an invitation, embossed with gold ink. Haven Financial, 25th Anniversary Gala. It had her husband's name on it, and hers, but rain had smudged the print, turned the edges to mush. The receptionist squinted. This looks fake. The woman smiled faintly, almost amused. Yes, I suppose it does. Her voice carried something strange, like she knew more than she said. Not arrogance. Something deeper. Resigned with grace. The guard radio crackled again. Unit 2, report at East Entrance. He sighed, impatient. You're gonna have to leave. I can't let you just stand here. The woman turned slightly, her reflection caught in the marble floor, distorted, fractured. She saw her own face divided by wealth and ruin. The guard didn't see it. He only saw a mess to remove. In the far corner, an older janitor watched quietly, mop in hand. His eyes flicked from the woman to the guard, then back again. Something in her calm bothered him. He'd seen panic before. Desperation. Anger. But this silence was different. It was known. Let me call upstairs, he muttered under his breath, moving toward a phone on the wall. The receptionist waved him off. Don't. She's probably from one of those shelters downtown. We can't keep dealing with this. The guard nodded in agreement. Rules are rules. Rules. The word hung heavy in the air. Rules built by people like her and enforced by people who never questioned them. The woman stepped closer to the glass desk. Her shoes left faint wet prints, like ghost footprints leading nowhere. I helped build this company, she said quietly. The receptionist smirked. Sure you did. I know you don't believe me, the woman continued, eyes soft. But one day, you might wish you had. Her voice wasn't threatening, just factual, almost tender. The guard frowned. All right, that's enough. Let's go. He placed his hand on her shoulder, firm, not cruel, but it was still a push. And for the first time, her composure trembled. Not from fear, from memory. She remembered the day her husband signed the papers, naming her co-founder. She remembered the promise they made. If we ever forget what it's like to be on the other side of that desk, we stop deserving to sit behind it. She had lived by that promise. He hadn't. As the guard led her toward the doors, the janitor called out softly, "Sir, maybe check her ID first." The guard turned, irritation in his jaw. "She doesn't have one." "I didn't say she did," the janitor said quietly, "but maybe she doesn't need one." The woman looked at him then, really looked. A flash of recognition, just a second. But real. Her eyes softened. "Thank you." The janitor lowered his gaze. He didn't know why he said it, only that something about her presence, dignified, weary, familiar, made cruelty feel heavier than usual. The rain outside had stopped, but the world still looked gray through the tall glass doors. Reflections blurred the city lights, like tears refusing to fall. The woman turned once more before stepping out. Behind her, laughter, muted, nervous, echoed from the receptionist's desk. The guard muttered into his radio. The janitor returned to his mop. No one noticed a man watching from the mezzanine above, a figure in a dark suit, phone in hand, eyes frozen on the scene below. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched the woman being escorted out. His wife, though no one here knew it. Not yet. And as the door closed behind her, the sound was almost holy, like judgment sealing itself in silence. The rain had left a sheen on the sidewalk, reflecting the tower's gold letters like an accusation. Haven Financial Group. The woman stood beneath the awning, her paper bag sagging, hair clinging to her face. Inside, warmth and laughter glowed through the glass. Outside, she looked like a ghost pressed against her own world. The security guard lingered by the door. Duty said stay alert. Conscience whispered, you went too far. But habit is stronger than conscience. He turned away. Inside, the janitor mopped the marble, slow, deliberate. His reflection trailed her faint footprints. Each one faded, but didn't disappear. Neither did the guilt. On the mezzanine, the man in the dark suit, Elias Hart, CEO of Haven, watched his wife being escorted out like a trespasser. He didn't move. Not yet. His plan required silence. He had built this entire week around it. The board thought his wife was overseas. The staff thought she was nobody. He wanted to see what Haven had become, without her name attached. Now he had his answer. Downstairs, the receptionist scrolled through her phone, telling her co-worker in a low, amused whisper. She said she built this place. Can you believe that? Her co-worker laughed. Yeah, maybe in another life. The janitor stopped mopping. Maybe you should be careful what you laugh at. They both glanced at him, rolling their eyes. Lighten up, old man. He didn't respond. He just looked toward the rain-darkened door, then back at the woman's footprints, still faintly visible. Outside, the woman stood in the drizzle again. She could have left. Should have. But something in her heart ached too deep for silence. She looked up at the 20-story tower, her tower. Behind the glass, everything gleamed. Inside, they'd forgotten the meaning of grace. A delivery boy passed by, balancing boxes of catering trays. Hey, you okay? He asked softly. She smiled. I will be. He hesitated, then pointed at the marble steps. They don't usually let folks hang around here. You might get in trouble. I already did, she said. Her voice carried warmth, not bitterness. The boy nodded awkwardly and walked on. Inside the building, the receptionist's voice sliced through the calm. Security, she's still out there. The guard looked up from his desk. She's not causing trouble. Still, the receptionist insisted. It doesn't look good. The gala's tomorrow. Press might show up. He frowned. She's not press. You sure? I'm sure. Then do your job. He exhaled. That word again. Job. He thought of the bills on his kitchen table, the uniform on the hanger. A man like him didn't get to choose compassion. He stepped outside. I told you. I know, she said gently. You told me to leave. He stopped. The calm in her voice unnerved him more than defiance would have. Look, he muttered, lowering his tone. I get it. You need help or a place to go. But this isn't it. Her eyes flickered up at the logo above the door. You're right. It isn't. He followed her gaze, then shook his head. All right, come on. Let's move along before someone from upstairs sees. Someone from upstairs already has, she said quietly. He blinked, confused. What do you mean? She didn't answer, just adjusted her coat, pulling it tighter. I used to think this place meant something, she murmured. That if we built it high enough, the light would reach everyone. But maybe we built it too high. He hesitated. The words hit something inside him, something he didn't have language for. You sound like my grandmother, he said finally. That's a good thing, she smiled softly. She sounds wise. Yeah, he said, almost whispering. She was. He stared at her a moment longer, then looked away. I could lose my job for this. For talking to me. For hesitating, he said. And there it was, the confession, the crack in the armor. Inside, the janitor stood near the lobby window, pretending to wipe the glass. He could hear their voices through the door. Behind him, the receptionist scoffed. Unbelievable. He's still talking to her. The janitor turned. Maybe you should try it. Try what? She said, defensive. Being human, he replied. Her mouth opened, but no words came. For a moment, shame flickered across her eyes. Then pride smothered it. She turned back to her computer. I don't get paid for that. The janitor smiled sadly. No one does. Outside, thunder rolled again in the distance. The sky dimmed to steel. The woman looked up at it. Storm's coming. The guard nodded. Yeah, feels like it. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small gold locket. Its clasp was rusted, but inside was a photo, 2 people younger, hopeful, laughing in front of this very building when it first opened. He glanced at it. Your husband? Yes. Where is he now? She met his eyes. Inside. The guard frowned. Inside, like working here. She smiled faintly. Something like that. He studied her face, trying to reconcile the words with what he saw. No anger, no fear, just truth, wrapped in mystery. Look, I don't know what's going on, he said slowly, but you don't belong out here in the rain. I don't belong inside either, she said softly. Not anymore. Inside, the man on the mezzanine put away his phone. He'd recorded every second. The laughter, the dismissal, the shove. He had seen the fear in his guard's eyes and the cruelty in his staff's. His thumb hovered over a single word on his screen. Proceed. Not yet. He wanted to see one thing first. Who among them would remember their humanity without being told to? He toned, signaling to a young intern beside him. Find out who's on shift at reception and security today, he said quietly. Yes, sir. And the janitor, he added after a pause. Get his name. The intern nodded, confused but curious. What should I tell them? Elias looked down at the rain, at his wife standing quietly beside the man who had just thrown her out. He whispered, mostly to himself, Tell them I'm watching. Back outside, the woman straightened her posture. The storm had passed, but the air still felt electric. The guard shifted awkwardly. I should, probably walk you off the property. I understand, she said. You're doing your job. He hesitated. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. She nodded. For what it's worth. I forgive you. He didn't know why that made his throat tighten. He just nodded back, then opened the door to let her leave the property line. Inside, the janitor watched. The receptionist scrolled. The cameras recorded. And somewhere above them all, a billionaire in disguise took a deep breath, because Mercy was about to meet justice. The next morning, Haven Financial gleamed like redemption polished to a mirror. Glass walls caught the sunrise, throwing light across the lobby like applause. The woman returned. Same coat, same quiet calm. But this time, something in her eyes had shifted. Resolve had replaced sorrow. The security guard spotted her before she even crossed the entrance line. His jaw clenched. He hadn't slept. Her face had haunted him through the night, not because of guilt, but because of confusion. Something about her didn't fit the story he'd told himself. He stepped forward. We went through this yesterday. She nodded. I remember. Then you know you can't. Before he could finish, the elevator doors opened behind him. A group of sharply dressed executives stepped out, laughter spilling between them like perfume. At the center was Marla Trent, the building's operations director. Every employee knew her voice before they saw her face. It was sharp, clipped, and carried a flavor of disdain that made the air taste metallic. "What's going on here?" Marla demanded, heels striking marble. "Why is she back?" The guard hesitated. "She says she's here to see her husband." Marla's eyes narrowed, then scanned the woman up and down. "Oh, I see. One of those." Her tone sliced the air. "We've had this problem before. People pretending to know someone inside. It's disruptive." The woman's expression didn't change. Pretending is easy when no one remembers the truth. Marla smirked. "All right, that's enough poetry. Security, get her out." The guard shifted uneasily. Yesterday's regret tugged at him. "She's not causing trouble." "Not yet," Marla snapped. "But she will. They always do." The woman tilted her head. "They?" Marla folded her arms. "People who don't belong here. You think this is a charity? This is Haven Financial, not a shelter." The receptionist behind the desk chuckled softly. The sound echoed in the hollow lobby. The janitor, mopping nearby, froze mid-stroke. His knuckles whitened around the handle. The woman looked at Marla and said quietly, "When did you forget what you're guarding?" Marla blinked. "Excuse me. This place, its purpose. You think you're protecting it, but you're only protecting its pride." The guard shifted again, eyes flicking between them. He wasn't sure why, but her words made his chest feel heavy. Marla rolled her eyes. "Enough of this nonsense. You've got 5 seconds to leave before I call the police." "Call them," the woman said calmly. That stopped everyone. The receptionist looked up. "Wait, what?" "Call them," she repeated, "if that's what it takes for you to feel powerful." The silence after that felt electric. Even the chandelier seemed to hum louder. Marla stepped closer, her voice low, venomous. "You really think you can talk to me like that?" The woman smiled sadly. "I think the world has forgotten who it's talking to." The guard reached for her arm again. Please." Her hand slipped from his grasp as she turned away and set her paper bag on the marble counter. Inside was a sealed envelope, thick, official, gold-stamped. "For Mr. Hart," she said softly. "It's his signature." Marla laughed. "Mr. Hart doesn't receive letters from people like you." The janitor muttered, "Maybe that's a problem." Marla spun toward him. "What did you say?" He looked up, eyes steady. "Maybe that's why people like her built this place, and people like you run it into ground." Gasps scattered around the room. The receptionist froze mid-keystroke. The guard's radio crackled uselessly. "For the first time," Marla faltered. Her voice thinned. "You're out of line, Daniel." Daniel, the janitor, set down his mop. "So were you, the second you forgot how to speak to another human being." The air felt charged, the kind that comes before thunder. The woman smiled faintly. "Thank you, Daniel." Her calm carried weight now, like the stillness before revelation. She looked around the lobby, eyes tracing the walls, the lights, the pride. "Every inch of this place tells a story," she murmured. "You can tell who built it by how they treat the ones who clean it." Marla's face tightened. "I don't know who you think you are, but this is over." She snatched the envelope from the counter and tore it open. Inside, crisp legal documents with a Haven seal. Her expression flickered. "What is this?" The woman stepped forward slowly. "Proof." Marla's eyes darted across the page. Her face drained of color. It was a contract, co-signed by Elias Hart and Margaret Hart. The founding documents of Haven Financial. Marla stammered. "This can't be." "It's been that way since day one," the woman said softly. "You've just never looked." The receptionist's mouth fell open. "You're Margaret Hart." She nodded once. "In the flesh, though I suppose that matters less to you than the suit I'm not wearing." The lobby fell silent. Even the elevators stopped chiming. Marla took a step back. "You can't just, this doesn't prove." But before she could finish, a voice came from the mezzanine above. Calm, deep, final. "It proves everything." Heads turned. Elias Hart stood there, no longer watching from the shadows. His voice carried like quiet thunder. Proceed. The sound of that single word echoed across the marble like a verdict. Moments later, two men in suits stepped out of the elevator. No badges, no uniforms, just authority in motion. Marla stammered. So, I didn't know. Elias descended the stairs, his gaze fixed on her. Exactly, he said coldly. You didn't want to. The woman, his wife, stood quietly beside Daniel. For the first time, she looked at her husband not as a man who forgot her, but as a man who finally remembered why she left. Their eyes met. No words, only understanding. Outside, thunder cracked again, rolling through the glass. Inside, justice had just taken its first breath. Silence fell like a curtain. Every breath in the lobby froze in place. Even the hum of the air vent seemed to pause, as if the building itself was listening. Elias Hart descended the marble staircase slowly, each step deliberate. His presence carried the gravity of truth, quiet, heavy, unstoppable. The executives behind Marla straightened their ties, unsure whether to flee or bow. Mr. Hart, sir, Marla stammered, voice trembling. I didn't know she was. My wife. Elias interrupted softly. You didn't know because you didn't care to ask. Margaret stood still beside Daniel, the janitor. Her coat still dripped faintly from the morning drizzle. The gold locket at her chest caught the chandelier light and threw it across the floor like a spark. Elias reached the bottom step and looked at his employees, not with rage, but with sorrow. This company, he began, was built on the idea that compassion is profit in its purest form. That success without dignity isn't success at all. No one spoke. Marla's mascara had begun to smudge, though she still tried to stand tall. The receptionist's hand hovered over her keyboard, frozen mid-type. The security guard stared at the ground. Elias continued, voice calm, almost mournful. When Margaret and I started Haven, we didn't have investors. We had a purpose. We promised each other we'd never become what we escaped, a place that looks rich but feels empty. His gaze found the guard. Tell me, what did you see when you looked at her? The man swallowed hard. Someone who didn't belong. Elias nodded slowly. And you were right. Not because of her clothes, but because she doesn't belong in a company that treats people this way. A murmur rippled across the staff watching from a balcony. Shame spreads fast when truth lands. Marla tried to recover her composure. So, if we'd known, if someone had told us. Elias cut her off with a quiet shake of his head. You shouldn't need a name to show respect. The words hung in the air like a final judgment. No one dared breathe too loudly. He turned toward his wife. You didn't have to come back. Margaret met his eyes. I did. I wanted to see if what we built could still feel like home. Her voice softened. It doesn't. Something broke in him then, just for a second. A flash of regret, raw and human, beneath the steel of leadership. Elias straightened, turning to the two men in suits beside him. Lock down the lobby. Suspend all internal operations until further notice. I want a full audit, hiring practices, training, management reports, everything. The suits nodded and moved swiftly. Tablets lit up. Phones buzzed. The employees began whispering in clusters, fear laced with awe. Marla's voice wavered. Mr. Hart, please, this will ruin me. Elias looked at her for a long moment. No, Marla, this might save you. He turned to Daniel. And you, what's your name, sir? The janitor hesitated, eyes wide. Daniel Ruiz, so. Daniel, Elias said, you spoke when everyone else stayed silent. You remembered what this place forgot. Starting today, you're promoted to facilities supervisor. Report directly to me. Gasps again, softer this time, tinged with disbelief. Daniel blinked. Sir, I don't know what to say. Elias smiled faintly. Say thank you to your conscience. It was hard work. Margaret looked around the room one last time. Her eyes met the guards, tired, regretful, searching for forgiveness. She gave a small nod. I told you someone upstairs was watching. He lowered his head. I'm sorry. She placed a hand gently on his arm. I know. The elevator doors opened behind them, waiting like a new beginning. Elias extended his hand toward her. Shall we? She hesitated for a moment, then took it, and as they stepped inside, the glass doors reflected the stunned faces left behind. Faces learning, too late, that kindness was the only currency that mattered. The elevator doors slid shut. For a long while, no one moved. Then Daniel whispered to no one in particular, Guess we just met the real owners of Haven. And somewhere above them, the building lights flickered once, as if the heart of Haven Financial had just started beating again. The lobby was still when Elias reached the last step. Marla's face had drained of color, her clipboard trembling in her hand. The guard, Tony, stood frozen beside the revolving door. His broad shoulders slumped, eyes darting between the billionaire and the woman he'd thrown out minutes ago. Elias turned to his wife first. Lena, he said softly, I'm sorry I let this place become something you'd be unwelcome in. Her eyes shimmered. The words hit her harder than any public apology could. But before she could respond, Marla's voice cracked the silence like breaking glass. Sir, Mr. Hart, I had no idea who she was. She came in dressed like her words stumbled, desperate. If I had known. Elias turned his gaze on her. The look alone silenced her mid-sentence. That's a problem, he said. You only show respect when you know who someone is. The board members exchanged nervous glances. The PR director adjusted his glasses, already imagining headlines. Elias motioned toward Tony. Is that the man who forced her out? Tony swallowed hard. Why, yes, sir. I thought she was a trespasser. I was following protocol. Protocol? Elias echoed. Does our protocol include shouting at customers in front of staff? Or grabbing a woman's arm? Tony's throat bobbed. No, sir. Lena stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but steady. He wasn't cool at first. He was doing his job. It was when Marla started shouting that everything shifted. Marla's jaw dropped. That's not true. It is, Lena said calmly, looking her in the eye. You called me a nuisance. Said people like me ruin the atmosphere. The lobby staff rose. Some lowered their eyes. Others looked like they might cry. Elias's voice hardened. Marla, when I hired you as operations manager, I trusted you to build an environment of respect, not humiliation. She stammered, Please, sir, one mistake. Not one mistake. He cut in, a reflection of everything that's gone wrong here. He turned toward the staff and raised his voice just enough for everyone to hear. I've spent years building this company, but somewhere along the way, we started measuring people by how they looked, what they wore, how much they could buy. My wife came in today looking for me, and this is how we treated her. A murmur rippled through the employees. The young receptionist wiped her eyes. The janitor at the back nodded silently. Elias took Lena's hand and faced them all. This woman beside me believed in this business before anyone else did. She scrubbed tables with me when we couldn't afford cleaners. She worked double shift when I had nothing. And now she can't even walk through her own lobby without being judged. He paused, breathing in deeply. The quiet was reverent now. Then he turned back to Tony. Tell me, son, Elias said, his voice low but not unkind. When you grabbed her arm, what did you see? Tony's eyes glistened. I saw someone I thought didn't belong. Someone who looked out of place. And what do you see now? Tony blinked hard. The owner's wife, but also someone who didn't deserve that. No one does. Lena looked at him gently. You have a family, don't you? He nodded, ashamed. She smiled faintly. Then you understand how it feels to be judged without being seen. Tony wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I'm sorry. Truly. Elias placed a hand on his shoulder. Apologies mean something when they lead to change. You'll stay, but from now on, you'll train every new guard on how to treat people with dignity. Understood? Tony straightened, relief breaking through his tears. Yes, so. Elias then turned to Marla. The warmth left his eyes. As for you, you're relieved of duty. Effective immediately. She gasped. You can't. I can, Elias said simply. And I. Security approached quietly, the irony not lost on anyone. Marla's clipboard clattered to the floor as she was escorted toward the exit she once ordered Lena to use. When the doors closed behind her, a wave of quiet respect filled the room. For the first time that morning, the place felt human again. Lena exhaled, her shoulders easing. You didn't have to do that for me. Elias looked at her and smiled. I didn't. I did it for us. They stood in the center of the lobby, the billionaire and the woman everyone had underestimated. Around them, staff slowly resumed their work, whispering apologies and promises under their breath. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Elias and Lena stood outside the glass building. The city lights shimmered on the surface, reflecting 100 tiny versions of them, side by side. You think they'll change? She asked. He nodded. They already started to. She smiled faintly. And what about us? He reached for her hand. We'll rebuild too. Together. And with that, they walked off into the fading light, the noise of the city humming around them, a quiet testament that power means nothing without grace, and respect means everything when no one's watching. A week later, the building felt different. Lena noticed at the moment she walked through the glass doors. No one looked twice at her. The receptionist greeted her warmly. Tony opened the door with a small, respectful nod, and even the junior staff smiled with genuine kindness instead of fear. The air that used to hum with anxiety now carried something gentler, humility. She made her way to the top floor. Elias's office door was open, sunlight spilling across his desk. He looked up from a pile of documents, exhaustion written across his face but softened by a calm she hadn't seen in years. Morning. Stranger, he said with a grin. Lena set down a small paper bag, coffee and the same pastries they used to share when they were just dreamers with a rented kitchen and big hopes. Peace offering, she said. Elias chuckled. From you? You're the one who deserves the apology tour. Maybe, she said, leaning on the desk, but rebuilding a business takes two hearts, not one. You forgot that for a while. He nodded slowly. I did, and I'm not making that mistake again. They sat together by the window overlooking the city. For a moment, silence wrapped around them, the kind that only comes when both people know the war is over. Then Tony appeared at the door. He looked different. Clean uniform, posture steady, a small training badge pinned to his chest. Sir, he said respectfully, I just wanted to thank you for giving me another chance. Elias stood and shook his hand. You earned it. I read the reports. Staff say your new training's already making a difference. Tony smiled. People just need reminders, sir, that every person walking through those doors has a story. Lena's eyes softened. That's the best policy this company's ever had. After he left, Elias leaned against the window. You know, the board's furious that I fired Marla without a hearing. And what did you tell them? I told them it wasn't firing. It was a lesson, one they should have learned long ago. Lena laughed quietly. I almost feel bad for her. Almost, Elias said with a grin. He turned back to his desk, eyes catching something tucked under his laptop, a folded note on company stationery. It read, in careful handwriting, for Mrs. Hart, thank you for forgiving me. I won't waste it. Tony, Lena smiled. He's got good handwriting. Elias nodded. Better Hart. She looked out over the city, her reflection merging with the skyline. No longer invisible, no longer the woman mistaken for less. Do you ever think, she said quietly, that maybe this happened for a reason? Elias looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't see wealth or status or expectations. He saw the woman who had carried him through every storm. Yes, he said, to remind us both who we really are. Outside, traffic hummed. Sunlight glinted off the building's glass, and the doors below swung open for another morning's rush. New faces, new lessons, and a company finally learning to see people first. And somewhere deep inside that lobby, in the heart of it all, the billionaire's wife, once thrown out, had become the quiet symbol of what respect should look like. The empire was no longer built on money. It was built on grace. Morning sunlight filtered through the high windows of the lobby. It landed softly on the marble floor where, a week ago, rainwater had pooled beneath Lena's feet. Now it gleamed like renewal. She stood quietly by the glass doors, watching employees arrive, chatting, laughing, holding coffee cups instead of judgment. Tony was greeting people with calm confidence, holding the door for an elderly cleaner. His tone was patient, warm. Humans. Lena smiled. So much could change when people finally saw. Elias approached from behind, slipping his hands into his pockets. "Looks different now," he said. "It feels different," Lena replied. "It's not the building that changed. It's the people." They walked slowly through the lobby together, past the receptionist's desk where a small sign now hung. Every person matters. A quiet hum of conversation filled the air, something that had once been replaced by fear. The workers no longer rushed. They greeted one another by name. Even the air smelled lighter, like coffee and hope. Lena paused near the spot where Tony had once raised his voice. "I used to think humiliation was the worst pain a person could feel," she said softly. "But it's not. It's indifference. When people look right through you, as if you don't exist." Elias nodded, his voice heavy with thought. "And what's the cure for that?" "Recognition," she said. "Not of status, of soul." They stepped outside into the gentle morning breeze. The city moved on, cars, footsteps, life. But inside that building, something had shifted forever. Lena looked up at the glass tower she had built with her husband. For the first time, she didn't see a symbol of wealth. She saw a mirror, reflecting every person who walked past it. Power, she whispered, was never meant to separate people. It was meant to protect them. Elias smiled faintly. "Then we finally got it right." She nodded, eyes glinting with quiet peace. And as the doors closed behind them, Lena thought of all the times she had watched others be dismissed, unseen, unheard. Maybe the lesson wasn't about forgiveness or retribution. Maybe it was this: that dignity, once lost, can only be restored through compassion. And compassion, when given freely, becomes a real wealth that no one can take away.